The tray of mini quiches was still warm. That's the only reason I remember the exact moment, because my hand hovered over the last one, and then I heard her voice, soft but slicing. "I don't need ours anymore." Not whispered, not shouted, just said, like she was ordering a refill on champagne. At first, I didn't even turn around. I thought, maybe it wasn't her voice. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe I misunderstood. But then a laugh followed. His laugh. And when I turned, I saw it. Not the drama I always pictured in my head if this day ever came. No tears. No raised voices. No running. Just her fingers interlocked with his, her body tilted slightly toward him like I never existed. I stood there with a tiny paper plate in one hand and a toothpick full of salmon in the other, completely invisible. My tie suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. My name tag, Spouse of Lorna C., looked like a sticker slapped onto a ghost. She didn't glance at me. She didn't flinch. She didn't even try to hide it. And I realized something. This wasn't the moment she left me. This was the debut. They'd been rehearsing this scene like a soft opening at a new restaurant. And tonight was the ribbon cutting. The official rollout of Lorna 2.0, now with a taller, shinier accessory. I just happened to be the outdated model in the crowd. Everything else was a blur. Someone tapped the mic. The company's VP gave a speech about vision and collaboration. There was clapping. There was more laughter. And I just kept standing there, still holding that godforsaken quiche, still trying to figure out how we went from our Sunday mornings to her Thursday evenings with him. You want to know the worst part? They didn't leave together. She stayed. He stayed. I stayed. In different corners of the same glittering room, 3 pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit anymore. And nobody noticed I was breaking. Not even her. When the clinking of glasses faded and the last round of applause ebbed into an awkward smattering of casual chatter, I didn't leave like I should have. Most people trickled out with their coats over their arms and polite smiles plastered to their faces. I stayed. Not out of courage, not out of defiance. I stayed because I simply didn't know where else to go. I stood by one of those high-top tables near the balcony, gripping a half-empty flute of flat Prosecco and staring at the skyline like the city might offer me an answer. They, Lorna and that man, eventually moved to a small lounge area tucked off to the side of the main room. I could see them through the glass, half-lit by amber floor lamps, their silhouettes bending closer to each other. She rested her hand on his knee. Her shoulders relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years, not even when she slept next to me. I remember wondering how long I'd been replaced emotionally before it happened physically. Had she been leaving me in pieces for months while I kept offering her my whole heart on a dinner plate? Around 11:40, the caterers began packing up. Someone took down the Step and Repeat banner with the Pinewick logo. People began calling rideshares. And still, I stayed. Lorna hadn't once looked my way. Not even when the CEO himself walked over and introduced himself to me as Lorna's friend. I nodded. I didn't correct him. I didn't say husband. That word suddenly felt like a fraud printed on a fake diploma. By midnight, the ballroom was nearly empty. Just 2 waitstaff lingering in the back and a tech guy coiling wires near the DJ table. I finally walked toward the exit, but not before sneaking one more look toward the lounge. She was gone. Only her wineglass remained. Lipstick at the rim, crimson and deliberate. I walked past the table where it sat like a monument to whatever I had just witnessed. As I did, I noticed something tucked beneath the glass, a folded piece of paper. It was a handwritten note, not addressed to me. Just a name at the top in swirled cursive, Caleb. I shouldn't have read it, but I did. It said, "Tonight is my soft goodbye. I've stopped pretending. He'll understand eventually. I know he will. He always wanted me to be happy, right?" There were no names beyond that. No malicious confessions. No shocking declarations of passion. Just calm, careful handwriting on expensive stationery, and the heavy finality of a woman who had already decided that the life we shared was now just a part of her past. I crumpled the note in my fist and held it there like it might stop my world from bleeding out. But it didn't. All it did was tremble, the way my hands used to when I first touched her back in college. I left the venue alone. I walked 2 blocks before realizing I didn't even remember where I parked. I ended up taking a cab home. The driver talked about sports. I nodded in all the wrong places. When I got back to the house, the porch light was still on. But the inside felt abandoned. There was no trace of her arrival. No purse on the counter. No heels by the door. Nothing. Only her voice still ringing in my ears from hours earlier. "I don't need ours anymore." She had said it so easily. So surgically. Like the word Ours had never meant anything to her in the first place. But to me, it had meant everything. And now? Now I had no idea what to do with the pieces she left behind. It was 2:08 in the morning when I heard the front door creak open. I didn't move. I was already sitting in the dark living room, still in my wrinkled dress shirt and half-loosened tie, the TV off, the room lit only by the flicker of the streetlight through our curtains. I had been there for nearly 2 hours, unmoving, rehearsing in my head every possible way I might confront her. But when I heard her keys drop into the ceramic bowl by the door, the one I made in a pottery class during our 3rd anniversary, I just sat there, silent, like a discarded extra in someone else's movie. Lorna stepped inside, heels clicking across the hardwood like nothing had happened. She didn't look surprised to see me. In fact, she barely acknowledged my presence. Just a passing glance, the kind you give to a coat rack or a coffee table, familiar, unimportant. She set her clutch on the kitchen counter, stretched her arms over her head, and exhaled with the dramatic sigh of someone who had just returned from a productive evening. That was the word she used a lot lately, productive. But tonight, the only thing she had produced was a wreckage I wasn't sure I could clean up. "You're still up," she said, opening the fridge as if we were roommates, not spouses. "Yeah," I replied, my voice hoarse from silence. "I didn't know what time you'd be back." Her head dipped slightly, barely perceptible. "It ran late. You know how these events are." I didn't answer. My knuckles were pale from gripping the armrest. I was holding back, not because I didn't feel anything, but because I felt too much. And I knew if I opened that door, the emotional one, I wouldn't be able to close it again. She poured herself water, sipped like nothing was wrong, then leaned against the sink and finally gave me a proper look. "Did something happen?" I blinked at her. "At the event? You mean besides you holding another man's hand while telling him our marriage is over?" She froze. The glass in her hand didn't shake, but her eyes did. Just a flicker. A moment. And then it was gone. She straightened up, took another sip, and said, "You misinterpreted." That was it. You misinterpreted. As if my entire evening, my entire life, was just a bad translation. Like my eyes had betrayed me, not her. "Don't do that," I said, standing now. My knees were unsteady. "Don't lie to me like I'm some clueless idiot who just imagined you making a public declaration that I mean nothing to you anymore." Her lips parted, a mixture of offense and caution creeping into her expression. "It wasn't public. Caleb is." "Caleb." I cut her off. "So that's his name. You said it like it should mean something to me. Like he means something to you." She didn't respond. She set the glass down and folded her arms like she was cold, but the room was warm. "What happened, Lorna?" I asked, finally letting it out. "Was it the money? Was it my job? Was I too boring? Too predictable? When did ours stop being enough for you?" She turned her face away and stared out the window, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know. It just faded. Faded. Like we were a photograph left too long in the sun." I didn't say anything else that night. She walked past me, slow and quiet, and climbed the stairs. I heard the bathroom door close. Then the water running. I stayed downstairs, staring at that spot on the floor where her heels had clicked so confidently earlier, as if that sound had more permanence than everything we built. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't before. She didn't feel guilty. She felt done. The next morning was eerily calm. Birds chirped. The coffee pot sputtered like it always did. Our neighbor's lawn sprinklers clicked on exactly at 7:30. And Lorna? She hummed. Not a song I recognized, just a vague tune under her breath as she moved around the kitchen in her robe, buttering toast like she hadn't detonated our marriage 12 hours earlier. I watched her from the hallway. Not like a spy, but like a man trying to remember how his wife used to look before she became someone he couldn't read. Everything about her routine was measured, rehearsed, like she was playing the role of a content wife in a breakfast commercial. But there was one problem. I wasn't in the frame anymore. "Morning," she said when she noticed me, her tone light, like she was daring me to shatter the silence. I didn't reply. I just walked to the fridge and opened it, even though I wasn't hungry. I needed a prop. Something to do with my hands so I didn't start shaking again. She slid a plate of toast toward me. "I figured you might be tired. I didn't want to wake you." Wake me? I had never gone to sleep. Instead, I had spent the rest of the night sitting in the living room, replaying her voice in my head. "I don't need ours anymore," until it felt like a splinter under my skin I couldn't dig out. I sat down across from her. She scrolled her phone absently, pausing to smile at something. I didn't ask what. I didn't want to know. "Big day at work?" I asked finally. She looked up, a flash of surprise crossing her face. Sort of. Just the usual meetings and a pitch review with Caleb's team. She said his name so easily now. No filter. No hesitation. That's a new one, I said, trying to keep my tone flat. I didn't know you worked on his team. She smiled faintly and stood up, brushing crumbs off her robe. Well, technically I don't. But we collaborate a lot. He thinks I've got potential for a new leadership role. Leadership. She used to say that about us too. That we were building a life together where both of us led. Where no one got left behind. She kissed me on the cheek, mechanical and hollow, then disappeared upstairs to change. As soon as I heard the door close, I reached for her phone. I didn't want to do it. I hated the idea of going through someone's private messages. But I also hated the idea of sitting in a house built on silence while my wife drifted further into a reality where I didn't exist. The phone was locked. Of course. But I knew the code. I'd known it for years. It opened. I didn't go to texts. I didn't search her photos. I opened her calendar. I don't know what I expected, some subtle pattern of working late entries, maybe a trip scheduled without me. But what I found was a color-coded monument to deception. C catch-up, 6:30 rooftop. L+C offsite brainstorm, not work-related. Blocked, healing space with C. Check-in, C's birthday dinner, confirm hotel. Don't forget, delete these later. I sat there with her phone in my hand, pulse thudding in my ears. These weren't just hidden appointments, they were plans. Intentional, careful, built brick by brick while I was in the other room Googling anniversary gift ideas or meal prepping like a fool. And she'd written healing space. What was I? A wound? I didn't hear her coming down the stairs until she was already in front of me, coat over her arm, car keys dangling from her fingers. You going somewhere? She asked, her tone too casual, but her eyes already narrowing at the sight of her unlocked phone in my hand. I looked up at her. My mouth was dry. Just reading your calendar. Her expression didn't change. Not guilt. Not panic. Just mild irritation. Wow, she said. That's a new low. Even for you. For me. I laughed, but it came out broken. Lorna, you've been booking hotels and healing nights behind my back, and I'm the one out of line? She stepped forward slowly, set her keys down with a precise click, and stared me down like she was at work negotiating a contract. This isn't how I wanted you to find out. Then how did you plan it? With hors d'oeuvres? A PowerPoint presentation? Maybe slip a post-it under my pillow that says, thanks for the loyalty. Here's a bottle of wine and a new toothbrush for your exit bag. Her jaw clenched. She didn't answer. I waited, but she offered me nothing. Not even a lie. Just silence. And that silence confirmed everything I feared. She had already left me. The only thing missing was the part where I finally accepted it. She left the house that morning with her chin held high and her silence wrapped around her like armor. No explanations. No apologies. Just the confident click of her heels against the porch and the quiet thud of the door closing behind her. I watched her drive off from the front window, her taillights blinking red as if warning me to stay away. I didn't move for a long time. I don't even remember blinking. But eventually, I turned back to the kitchen, sat down at the table again, and stared at her phone, still unlocked in front of me. I didn't want to touch it anymore. It felt radioactive. I placed it down like it might detonate. That's when I noticed something strange, a notification. Not a text or email. A sync alert. Her phone was still linked to our shared cloud storage folder. The one we set up ages ago to dump receipts, scan contracts, photos, and backups for just in case. I had forgotten about it. She clearly hadn't. I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder. It hadn't been touched in months, at least, not by me. But this morning, something new had uploaded automatically. A zipped file. I clicked it open. Inside, screenshots. Not from her phone. From what looked like her work laptop. Chat logs. Voice notes. Calendar exports. It took me a moment to realize she must have backed them up while transferring files between devices. She probably assumed I didn't even know how to access this folder anymore. But I did. And what I saw felt like peeling my own skin off one layer at a time. A message from Caleb. I still think about that night in Chicago. You looked back at me in that hotel mirror like you were already gone from him. Another from her, timestamped just 4 days ago. He won't fight. He never does. It's almost like he knows he doesn't deserve to keep me. I read that one 4 times, slower each time, as if maybe the words would change. But they didn't. She had written that I don't deserve her. That I never did. That being quiet, being patient, being me was weakness. My vision blurred with tears I didn't want to admit were there. I was angry, yes, but it was the kind of slow, collapsing anger that comes when you realize the battle was lost long before the first shot was fired. I had been standing in an empty home, defending a version of love that no longer existed. But that's when something inside me cracked. Not broke. Cracked. The kind of crack that lets light in, or lets something dark out. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to chase her. I wasn't even going to beg for the truth anymore. I had done all of that in my head already, for months, in 1,000 invisible ways. No. What I was going to do was watch. She thought I wasn't capable of seeing. She thought I'd stay in the dark like a loyal pet, waiting for scraps of her affection. But now? Now I had the one thing she never expected. Time. Access. Silence. That day, I called in sick to work, not that anyone noticed. I spent hours piecing together a timeline using the files she never meant to share. Her travel receipts, copies of hotel invoices, duplicate photos she forgot to crop. One in particular burned itself into my brain. Her sitting in a rooftop bar, laughing into Caleb's shoulder, wine glass in hand. The file was named Q2_clientdinner.jpg, like a lie dressed in business casual. The more I found, the clearer it became. This wasn't a fling. This was a design. A gradual erasure of me from her life. A soft transition. A company-wide rebrand of her personal story, with me edited out like bad stock footage. But here's the part she didn't know. While she was leading strategy meetings that week, I found her backup account. Buried under a secondary email with her maiden name, she had created a new cloud storage full of correspondence, documents, even voice notes where she rehearsed conversations with Caleb about when and how to tell me gracefully. It was all laid out. Even the language she planned to use. He's a good man, she said in one clip. But he's not my man anymore. He'll understand eventually. I'll help him land softly. Land softly? She wanted to eject me from our marriage like I was a seat cushion being politely discarded mid-flight. By the time she returned that evening, I was back at the kitchen table, just like the morning before. Same posture, same chair, same coffee mug. But this time, something in me had shifted. I wasn't waiting for answers. I was planning what I would do with the truth. She walked in carrying takeout, some Mediterranean place. Hummus, rice, lamb skewers. She even bought my favorite mango drink. A peace offering. The dinner of a woman who thought this whole mess was a chapter we could skip over. She set the bag down gently. Thought you might be hungry. I nodded slowly. Thanks. Then I added the first real lie I ever told her. I'm fine. Because the truth? I wasn't fine. But I was finally awake. She sat across from me that night, dipping pita into hummus like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't spent the last several months orchestrating a gentle exit from the life we built. I watched her eat, not really tasting my own food, not really sure what part of this felt more surreal, the calm domestic setting or the fact that I now knew everything. I knew the exact hotel in Denver. I knew the receipt from the boutique where she bought the dress she wore the night she whispered in his ear that she didn't need ours anymore. I knew her passwords, her flight history, her auto-synced recordings. I even knew how she was going to spin this in the future, how she'd tell people it was mutual, amicable, that we drifted apart. But here's what she didn't know. I wasn't going to give her that version. Not anymore. After dinner, she stood up, collected her plate, and leaned in to kiss my forehead like she used to when we were still happy. I let her kiss me while I was silently holding a folder on my lap, one filled with every detail of her betrayal. I didn't hand it to her. Not yet. I wanted her to sleep one more night thinking she still had the upper hand. That tomorrow would come and go, and I'd still be the same harmless version of myself she'd grown bored of. The next morning, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly 2 years, my cousin Teddy. Teddy was the kind of guy who didn't ask questions. He was messy, reckless, and not exactly a beacon of wisdom. But he had one thing I needed: access. Teddy had a knack for uncovering things that were meant to stay hidden. Not in a malicious way, more like a twisted hobby. I told him I had a situation. He didn't even wait for details. Just said, "You want screenshots or witnesses?" I told him I wanted both. Later that afternoon, while Lorna was at a brainstorming lunch with Caleb confirmed via her calendar and now also her synced rideshare log, thanks, digital footprint, Teddy sent me a file. Inside was something I hadn't expected. It wasn't just them at lunch. It was him, Caleb, sitting across from someone else. A woman. Someone he clearly didn't know was photographing him. It turns out Caleb had a wife. Her name was Margot. And she had no idea. The image showed him holding Lorna's hand across the table, and behind them, out of focus but perfectly framed, was Margot herself, just entering the restaurant. Teddy had caught her face mid-step, confused, watching her husband and my wife wrapped in a moment neither of them planned to share with the world. Teddy said Margot walked out seconds later, never even confronted them, just turned and left. That changed everything. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about pattern. About two people carving secret tunnels out of their commitments and thinking no one would ever trace their escape routes. And now, I had something they couldn't control. That evening, Lorna came home humming again. I almost laughed. That tune, it was always something meaningless. Background noise. Like the truth. Long day? I asked. She stretched. Not too bad. Caleb's team closed a pitch we'd been chasing. Might even get a bonus if the numbers come through. I nodded, playing along. That's great. You two seem close. Her eyes flicked up briefly. We're aligned. That's all. That word, aligned, was so cold, so mechanical. She spoke like our marriage had been a trial run, and she had finally graduated into a better system. That night, after she fell asleep beside me, still breathing slow and steady like she didn't have the weight of lies on her chest, I emailed Margot. I didn't say much. Just this. Hi, Margot. You don't know me, but I think we share a wound. I'm not reaching out to destroy lives. I think that part already happened. But you deserve the truth. And I think you've suspected it. I've attached a file. Take care of yourself. B. Then I powered down my computer, walked to the bathroom, and stared at my reflection. I looked tired, hollowed out. But there was something else there now. Something she hadn't seen coming. Resolve. She thought I was too soft, too slow to react, too mild to ever rise. But what she didn't know was that when a quiet man finally moves, it's because he's done carrying the weight of pretending. She was asleep upstairs. Her other life had just detonated downstairs. And the first domino had already fallen. 3 days passed before I heard from Margot. 3 days of pretending, of watching Lorna sip wine on the patio like the world was perfect, of sitting across from her at dinner while she told me about internal rebranding discussions and new leadership energy. She had no idea what was coming. Or maybe she did, but convinced herself she could stay ahead of it. That's how people like her operate. They live in bubbles of charm and detachment, just enough charisma to distract from the trail of wreckage they leave behind. On the third night, at exactly 8:12 p.m., my inbox pinged. Subject, I know. From Margot Lawrence. Erwin. Thank you. That sounds like such a weak thing to say, considering the magnitude of what we've both been dragged through, but thank you anyway. I confronted him. He denied it, of course. Then blamed stress. Then me. Classic. But the photos, those were a mirror. I told him to pack a bag. I didn't tell him I got the same email you did. I hope you're okay. I hope she doesn't turn it around on you like you tried with me. If you ever want to talk, really talk, not as victims, but just witnesses, my number's below. Take care of yourself. Margot. I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard, unsure whether I wanted to respond, or delete it, or print it out and tape it to the mirror so I could remember that someone else saw it too. That I wasn't imagining the collapse. That I wasn't weak for noticing. That night, Lorna made fettuccine and poured wine like it was date night. She even lit candles. I could tell something was off. Her timing was too precise. Her questions too intentional. Are you okay? She asked as I was twirling pasta that tasted like paper. I nodded. Of course. Why? She shrugged, swirling her wine. You've just been distant. I almost laughed. You mean like how you've been for the past 6 months? She blinked. Just once. But that was the first crack. Not in her voice, but in her performance. I've just been busy, she said softly. You know how work gets. Sure. I replied. Caleb keeping you on your toes? The way she froze told me she wasn't ready for that. I didn't say anything else. I let it hang. I let her twist inside the quiet the way I had for months. Later that night, as she was brushing her teeth, I saw her phone light up. I didn't need to look at the screen to know what it was. She had turned her ringer off, a new habit. She never used to do that. The glow dimmed, and she walked into the bedroom with that same rehearsed calm. I waited until she fell asleep, then stepped outside and dialed Margot's number. I didn't even know what I was going to say. I just needed to hear a voice that wasn't coded in dishonesty. She answered after 2 rings. Her voice was calm. Low. I'm guessing she still doesn't know you know. She has no idea. There was a pause. It's funny, Margot said. I used to envy women like her. Confident. Magnetic. The kind of woman who walks into a room and everyone leans in. Now I just feel sorry for her. I didn't say anything. She thinks she's winning, Margot continued. But all she's really done is burn the only bridge she could stand on. People like that don't realize how loud their silence is. How obvious their escape plans look. We spoke for 20 minutes. Not about revenge. Not about how to expose them. Just about the numbness. The absurdity. The cruel irony of loving someone who slowly edited you out of the script while still asking you to stay on set. When I finally went back inside, Lorna was still asleep, the sheets folded neatly over her shoulder like a movie scene. I watched her for a moment and wondered how many goodbyes she had already rehearsed behind closed doors. She hadn't noticed it yet, but her safe little world had begun to collapse. Margot was gone. Caleb's calls would start to dry up. Questions would be asked. Accounts would be checked. Coworkers would talk. And she would turn, one morning, expecting my silence and find only absence. Because the real damage wasn't the affair. It was the way she looked at me every day after it started. And thought I was too small to ever notice. She didn't hear me get up that morning. She didn't hear the zipper on the duffel bag or the quiet creak of the closet door. I packed slow, not out of hesitation, but out of something closer to reverence. Reverence for the man I used to be. The man who gave everything to this marriage, who thought loyalty was the same as love, who confused silence with strength. I wrote her a note. Not a dramatic letter. Just a page torn from the back of an old notebook. Something simple, something quiet, something she couldn't interrupt halfway through. Lorna. I saw everything. Not just the messages. Not just the calendars. I saw you. The new you. The one you built without me. And it's okay. You don't need ours anymore. But I do. I need something that's truly ours, mutual, real, chosen every day. So I'm letting go. Not because I'm defeated, but because I'm finally free. You don't have to lie anymore. You're released. And so am I. Take care of yourself. E. I left the note on her pillow, next to her phone. I didn't erase her contacts. I didn't expose her. I didn't make a scene. I just walked out. And as I stepped into the morning light, bag over my shoulder, I didn't feel broken. I felt light. Not all endings come with closure. Some just come with space. With air. With the sound of your own feet finally carrying you forward. I stayed with Teddy for a few days. Not ideal. His couch smells like old pizza and his dog sheds like a snowstorm, but it gave me room to breathe. Margot checked in once. Just a simple, hope you're doing okay. I replied with, for the first time in a long time, I think I am. Weeks passed. I got a new place. A small rental with creaky floors, a busted porch light, and a window that lets in too much wind. But it's mine. All mine. I planted a cactus on the windowsill and named it ours as a reminder that I get to redefine that word now. Lorna never replied to the note. She didn't try to find me. I think, in her own way, she respected that. Or maybe she just moved on. Either way, it doesn't matter. Because I did. I joined a community group for people starting over. I started running again. I bought noise-canceling headphones and began building playlists of songs I actually like. I even started cooking again, not to impress anyone, but just because I enjoy it. I'm not the man I used to be, and I'm so thankful for that. The truth is, when someone tells you they don't need what you built together, they're giving you the greatest gift in disguise. The chance to build something better, with someone who will never ask you to shrink for it. So to anyone reading this, still clutching a fading version of love, let go. Not because you lost, but because you're finally ready to win.